to another episode of the Raccoon Club podcast, the podcast dedicated to convincing people that the human race just isn't worth saving. Today we're going to talk about, and I'm actually going to try and defend, a guy that's been villainized over the last couple of days for being uncaring, for being unresponsive, for seemingly to break his own brand value, for seemingly to go against his own teachings and philosophies, and that's Joel Osteen. Now, if you're not familiar, Joel Osteen is a preacher from Texas who has caught a lot of flack the last few days because it took a long time for him to open up his mega church to the flood victims in Houston. And people, of course, went ape on him on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram, as well as a lot of the media itself attacked him for their opinion that he just wasn't responsive enough, that he was somehow hypocritical to his teachings and his belief as a Christian. Well, I'm actually going to defend Joel Osteen because he wasn't hypocritical to his beliefs as a Christian. He wasn't hypocritical in terms of what he preaches. He did exactly what he preaches. He is a prosperity gospel advocate. And if you know anything about prosperity gospel advocates, the only thing they care about is enrichment. The only thing they care about is taking. They don't give a damn about giving, at least not the pastors and the ministers in this philosophy. So let's start off from the basics. What is the prosperity gospel? Prosperity gospel is a theology that is uniquely American. It doesn't really exist in Christianity at this form outside the United States. And the theology basically preaches that the entire universe is like a giant slot machine, and that there may be a guaranteed payoff for you, but you can only get something out of the system, as it were, if you put something in, and that's called a seed offering. So as a believer, you're required to give money to the church and to the pastor in the hopes that money will come back to you. Now, this is very much like a pyramid scheme. In fact, it pretty much is, except that there's no multi-level marketing. You just give directly to the guy or to the lady on top and then hope the universe sort of rains money down on you. It's actually so insidious. There's something called a sacrificial, which is actually giving more than you can afford. The prosperity gospel, no surprise, has been flourishing in the United States amongst the poor and the working class, all trying to find a way for them to live the American dream. Now, Kathleen Falzani of Religion Dispatches wrote the following in one of her articles. Told that wealth is a sign of God's grace and favor, followers strive for trappings of luxury they can little afford in an effort to prove that they are blessed spiritually. She claims that its message stands in contrast to the example set by Jesus in the Bible. Jesus, she goes on to write, was born poor and died poor. During his earthly tenure, he spoke time and again about the importance of spiritual wealth and health. When he talked about material wealth, it was usually part of a cautionary tale. Now, most people who are familiar with the teachings of Jesus know that bit. However, if you're part of the prosperity gospel, that's not preached that much because the prosperity gospel is focused more on the accumulation of wealth as a sign of God's love, not the fact that God's love exists regardless whether you're rich or you're poor. They believe that the richer you are, the more God loves you. So what does this all have to do with Joel Osteen? Well, if you believe in the prosperity gospel, if you believe that the accumulation of wealth is more important than giving money, if you believe that having more assets is more important than having less assets, why the fuck would you open up your doors to a group of hungry, starving, desperate flood refugees if you know that's going to cost you money? Again, people attacked him because he was going against his core belief as a Christian. No, it wasn't. He was doing exactly what his belief in Christianity and his belief in Jesus tells him that he should do. And what's funnier to me is that his view of Christianity is nothing more than the corrupt, delusional, mirage-like American dream that the country believes in. All he believes in is spiritual capitalism. That's really it. I'm not sure why we're knocking the guy. That guy is actually being completely honest to the traditions of America to begin with. And it has always been the great American tradition to fleece suckers. Now, Joel Osteen is not alone in this tradition. There are other prosperity gospel preachers out there. In fact, one of them, Paula White, actually spoke at Donald Trump's inauguration, which quite frankly could not be more perfect. Who better than to speak at the inauguration of the fleecer-in-chief than an advocate of the prosperity gospel? She once said the following. She said, God is speaking clearly to someone right now. Do not hesitate. Your sacrificial offering will be a seed for blessings for the remainder of the year. According to Ezekiel 44, when you present your first fruits offering, it will cause a blessing to rest upon your house. Again, she believes that blessings are purely material. She believes that blessings are financial, are asset driven. What is more American than that? What is more typically capitalistically American than that? Why are people bashing these guys if all they're doing is advocating openly the true religion of America, the true religion of the West, which is the accumulation of wealth? That is what we are taught when we're young. We're taught that we should become doctors and lawyers because they earn the most money. We're taught how important it is to cultivate an image and buy a home and get a car. We invented a whole category of assets called the first home. Because why? Because you need to have a first home so you can have a second home and then have a third home, a first car so you can have a second car and a third car and a fourth car. Joel Osteen does not preach anything that every single bank in America has been preaching since day one. The idea that you should give them money so you can get money. Invest with us so you'll return. You'll get a residual. You'll get an income. You'll get a dividend. It is no different than Paula White preaching about Ezekiel 44. Ezekiel 44 is the foundation of capitalist dogma. Ezekiel 44 and that version of interpretation is the foundation of the American dream. Give us your money and hopefully some of it will rain back down on you. Joel Osteen calls it the prosperity gospel. Ronald Reagan called it trickle-down economics. It's no different. Why are we beating this guy over the head for practicing the religion and the faith of America? There is no more greater example of American religion than Joel Osteen. The only other person I think in the history of America, in fact, the one other guy I think that truly represents American faith and truly represents American religious values is not Joel Osteen, is L. Ron Hubbard. I've joked for years with my friends that Wall Street should move the bull in front of the Wall Street Stock Exchange and put up a statue of L. Ron Hubbard. Because L. Ron Hubbard did the great American fleece. He looked at the marketplace. He saw a niche for sort of self-help, new age, new way of redefining humanity, new way of living life. And he created an entire religion for it. And he didn't just create it. It wasn't just sort of your generic cult where they sort of take you out into the woods and you meditate all day long and you live this sort of Luddite life in hopes that the rapture's going to come take you. No. He did the most American thing. He created a financial model around the faith. In fact, there is no way to advance within the religion of Scientology other than paying your way through it. You have to pay for every single step. What is more American than that? What is more basically capitalistic than that? He was a genius because his religion was absolutely batshit crazy. He came up with an entire space opera and labeled it as a religion. He came up with some of the most insane concepts. He just pulled stuff out of his ass, slapped it down on a piece of paper, and people paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for it and continue to do so today. Joel Osteen should not be vilified for what he did. He should be celebrated for what he did, because isn't that what we're taught to value? Isn't that what we're taught to believe in? that you should watch out for yourself first. You should accumulate first because your worth as a human being, your value as a human being is what is in your bank account, is what you wear, is the brands that you surround yourself with. Look around us. Look what advertisers tell us. Look what politicians tell us. When politicians tell us about what makes a country great, what do they focus in on? Your job, your tax rate, what's in your bank account. Even John F. Kennedy once said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. This idea of giving back to people greater than you, giving back to the 1%, giving back to the establishment, giving back to the system in hopes that this artificial construct that we call an economy is going to reward you. It is the faith of the United States. You think it's an accident? You think it's by fluke that we put in God we trust on money? There's no more corrupt thing on the planet than putting in God we trust on our money. There is no more spiritually bankrupt thing you can do than have the word God anywhere on currency. Currency that buys misery, currency that buys oppression, currency that destroys the environment, currency that exploits workers, currency that acts as the value of our own personal self-worth. People mock the prosperity gospel. I think it's spectacular because it's nakedly obvious. It is simply saying out loud what we've always been told, and it is plain simple. The only people that matter are rich. All you poor and middle-class fucks can go off and die because you're not worth saving. You're not worth paying attention to. If you give us money, then maybe something nice will happen to you. When Joel Osteen turned away all those people at his church, when Joel Osteen didn't open up the doors to his church, all he was doing was continuing a proud and long tradition in America of fucking over the poor. All he was doing was continuing a long tradition in America where the rich and powerful, where those that are financially able, do absolutely nothing for anyone else around them. As a nation, America can eliminate homelessness in a year if it wanted to, but that means spending money. As a nation, America can end poverty. It can end hunger. It can end want and need within its own borders. Never mind outside. Let's just look within the own borders. If it wanted to. But that means spending money. And those rich guys don't want to do that. People that are already worth $1, $2, $10, $20, $30 billion are still bitching for a tax cut because they want a little bit more, because the $1, $2, $10, $20, $30 billion they have just isn't good enough. It doesn't satisfy their need. It doesn't satisfy their greed. It doesn't make them feel worthful. They need more to feel better. What is Joel Osteen doing other than preaching the gospel of America, the gospel of capitalism? Why are we beating up on him? Why do we beat up on L. Ron Hubbard? Now, the prosperity gospel is actually, no surprises here, controversial within the larger evangelical, Presbyterian, Anglican, Catholic religious world, because many people have literally called it heresy. Many people have literally said that you are, by practicing this, you are actually committing your soul. Evangelical blogger Eric Erickson wrote the following, and of course, as a evangelical white male Republican, he can't make a point without insulting someone else. So he said, I'd rather a Hindu pray on Inauguration Day and not risk the souls of men than one of those heresy lures in souls with promises of comfort only to damn them in eternity. Now, why are all these people so upset at prosperity gospel? I don't think it has much to do with spiritualism, to be honest with you. I don't think it has much to do with Jesus or the gospel or tradition. I think they're just offended that people like Joel Osteen are cutting into their racket. They see him and his ilk as sort of rival mob bosses moving in on their turf, taking their business off the corner street. A televangelist called Creflo Dollar, literally his name is Creflo Dollar, once asked his donors to help him buy a $65 million private Gulfstream jet, a private jet, so he can go around the world and preach this racket and bilk other suckers out of their money. Now, he actually denied that he preaches the prosperity gospel, which I find kind of interesting. Instead, he said that he believes that God simply wants the best for him. Evidently, the only way